it is socially acceptable to be against the idea of polygamy in a Western society, but then it becomes you're labeled in certain ways. If you don't agree, you're not interfering with the way they're living. You're not for them being, hii kitu ya wao kupigwa ama being evicted na nini, but you're just not, the idea is you're just not agreeing with this kind of lifestyle. Forget about being gay. If my son one day comes and tells me I'm a killer, I have murdered 1,500 people, will I stop loving my son? Absolutely no. When it comes to, like the other rights part, I think that's where there needs to be clarity. Yeah. What rights are we talking about? Because like what you've talked about, harming them, evicting them, firing them.
And there are kids that have not been able to finish their education because there were allegations that they were sleeping together in single-sex schools. So we're in total agreement.
Okay. So I think the problem is when we start crossing the line and go into issues of, now, for example, like within the Western world, they've crossed the line and they're like, we should now give them the rights to get married. Like in the US now, like it is legal for gay people to get married.
So as two Kenyan men, and I'm assuming we're both heterosexual men, let me make that assumption.
Good assumption.
Okay.
Very good assumption.
As two heterosexual men, I don't think we have the right to essentially establish or to pronounce how Western society should decide to organize itself.
We don't.
Right?
Yeah.
So to be honest, I sympathize with you if it's uncomfortable that you're in Maryland, but my sense is...
I think the juxtapose I'm trying to bring is, for example, this idea of live and let live. And I'm in agreement with you. Like what people do in their bedroom, there's worse things people are doing. Yeah. But within this Western context that we are living in, which is very different, would you be mad, like at a person if we came and said, because of like something that a minority wants to introduce here, for example, a good example is polygamy. Right. Polygamy is viewed in a very different way in Western societies. So if we came as maybe a group of people who wanted to be polygamous and started demanding our rights, would you be, like, would it be okay?
Let me go a bit further. I would personally support you.
Okay, but would you be angry at an American who's only known marriages between one man and one woman to this person who's now coming and saying we now need marriage for one man and 2 or 3 women?
To be honest, if it was consensual, they're adults, nobody's getting hurt in the process, it's not my business. Like,
it's not your business.
My life will not stop, in terms of what my neighbors are doing.
But you see where the juxtapose is.
As long as there's no violence.
As long as there's no, but you see where the juxtapose is, where it is socially acceptable to be against the idea of polygamy in a Western society, but then it becomes you're labeled in certain ways. If you don't agree, you're not interfering with the way they're living. You're not for them being, hii kitu ya wao kupigwa ama being evicted na nini, but you're just not, the idea is you're just not agreeing with this kind of lifestyle. And even as a parent, sometimes even here in the West, they're like, this is something that I want to opt out on my children being taught in school. So the juxtapose I'm talking about is these things that it's socially acceptable for a Westerner to say polygamy is bad. But then now when you come back in a different, you're from an African society and you're like, I don't agree with this lifestyle, you're some kind of backward person, you're some kind of person who, that's a juxtapose that I'm talking about, which I think needs to be challenged. And then sometimes people throw these things like, oh, you guys are saying this was never invented here or there, but let me let Mika speak because this is actually,
we should open it up a bit.
Yeah, we should open it up a little bit. Mika, this is a question that Mika had brought up, so maybe Mika talk so that we can get a different perspective and on why you felt like this question was important.
Yeah, and then the comments are quite interesting.
Yes, then we're gonna come to the comments.
They're bubbling.
They're bubbling.
Yeah. See me and Timurima, but Murima imeguzwa hapa.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Umeogopa hii story sana. No, but me, I agree with what Rongo is saying, because at the end of the day, being gay and you do realize that the aspect of gayism that is really shunned upon in Africa and most of the world is homosexuality more than anything else. And if we go back to, as we all agreed, and I don't want to take us back to history, this has been something that's been happening there back in time, even back to history when people had body slaves. That was the function of the body slaves. When you went to war, you're going with the body slave to manage my challenges for you. Kondo ukipigana unapigana na akili ko clear. But what we need to talk about is that also there's, as much as we're saying we've been raised in a way whereby we know that this is not something that's accepted in our culture, it's something foreign among us, but also this hate that we have is something that has been taught into us. Right? We have religion, which plays a big part in telling us that this is wrong. And then we have the Western culture that was trained to us, that came and told us that it is illegal to do this. Like these were laws that were put in by the British, and they were put in during colonial times. So it's something that, is it something that is just preached along? Like the way we were talking about rights for other people, the way we were talking about rights for women, they were talking about rights for children. And should we also have a right on allowing somebody to love who they want to love? We don't want it to be, yes, we're not saying that let's accept all what every other country is doing on how they want to write their laws, but let's just have the decency of not killing people because they're gay. Let's have the decency of not disinheriting people because they're gay. Because I always ask people this simple question. If your child told you, you've loved your child the whole of your life, amefika miaka 25, akuja kwambie, Dad, Mom, I'm gay. Will you stop loving them because they're gay? Or will you continue loving them because they're your child and you've loved them all your life?
Yeah, now, Irugu, before you answer Mika's question, because that question also comes up. Forget about being gay. If my son one day comes and tells me I'm a killer, I have murdered 1,500 people, will I stop loving my son? Absolutely no. But I'm bringing that up because this is also brought up, like to emotionally charge. So yes. So most people who are against that, and I know people are afraid of speaking because they fear being labeled, because that happens very fast. I can already see it in the comments happening. So people fear speaking about this. But yes, if, for example, one day my son comes and tells me, Dad, this is the lifestyle that I'm living. It doesn't matter what it is. So I think it's important to have clarity on that. And I'm saying this because I know there's a lot of people out there who want to say something, but because of the environment that has been created, it's like you're either for this or you're hateful. And what I like about how Mika brings it out is that Mika also acknowledges, in as much as, we may see this in divergent views, Mika also acknowledges the problem that's there with the people who are now in this class, whereby they quickly try to throw people under the bus as being hateful, as being this or that. whatever they're accusing those people of, they're doing it in a worse way.
Before let me add on to that. I think there's also, and it's a conversation and discussion outside of the show, like amongst peers and some boys, just having discussions, and sometimes it's like the conversation or the view is so one-sided in that it behooves the persons being told to accept what is going on. However, in as much as you want me to accept your situation, how about you accept that my situation where, hypothetically speaking, I don't agree with that. Agree with that.
I'm not for any hate. I'm not for you to be fired from your job. I'm not for you to but I just don't agree.
It's just like listen, if you're lactose intolerant and if you are and I am not, I cannot bring milk and say, boss, kunywa maziwa. Where would you
jikaze tu?
Boss, jikaze kunywa. But yet you're lactose intolerant.
So
I mean, and I think it's a cheap way to describe it, but however, it is a practical way, because respect the fact or respect my stance where on my stance on this particular issue. I'm not saying, like you said, I'm not going to say you're never welcome to my house or whatever, no. But I understand you do your thing. But respect, you want me to respect, I will respect your position. Respect my position of not wanting to being uncomfortable, or in the situation that I've been brought up for the last 30 years or 40 years, this is what I've been taught.
Yeah.